Good morning, everyone. This is Mr. Tesla from World Journalism Preparatory School in Flushing, Queens, New York. If you are watching this video, you may be looking for some information to review for the U.S. History and Government Regents, which will be taking place on Tuesday, June 13th, 2017. This is what I call the final countdown, some important information that you want to check out and be familiar with when you're working your way through the multiple choice sections, and it can also be very valuable in terms of writing your thematic and DBQ essays. I'm going to put out another video shortly with regard to some tips and tricks to kind of hack your way through the other sections of the exam. But for right now, this is kind of a quick, the Cliff Notes version, if you will, of some really important information for the U.S. History Regents. This is the first part of probably will be a few videos, so why don't we go ahead and get this going. All right, so some free stuff that's frequently asked on the U.S. History and Government Regents. Let's start at the beginning with geography. All right, first couple of questions on the exam, usually the first two or three, have something to do with geography. So some of the things that have come up in the past, as you can see here. Number one on the hit parade is the Mississippi River or the Port of New Orleans. Anything having to do with rivers or water will have something to do with trade and shipping, okay? Improvement, making things go faster, making the rate at which trade or business or ideas are spread faster, okay? Every development with regard to water and water power and the use of water increases the ability of our country to trade, makes it go faster, makes business take place faster, hence more money. The Erie Canal, upstate New York, opens up trade and improves transportation. Okay, again, cheaper, faster, improves business. It connects the New York area with the Ohio River Valley. All right, we're talking about the northern and southern regions. Generally, the idea is that the north will lend itself because of its climate, because of its geography, to shipping. The climate and the geography of the south will lead it to the use of slavery and plantations. All right, when we speak about the Atlantic Ocean, all the colonies, or most of the colonies, the 13 original colonies, are set up right on the coast of the Atlantic Ocean. The Atlantic Ocean serves as a barrier, an obstruction, if you will, to foreign invasion. Okay, it will lead later on to isolationism, which is America's unwillingness to participate in the affairs of Europe. And lastly, the Appalachian Mountains are the initial or original border of the colonies. Okay. It's there where we make the proclamation, or England makes the proclamation of 1763, which is going to be the beginning of tension between the Americans and the English, and will subsequently lead to the War for Independence. Moving on, we talk about some developments in the colonies. Some of the frequent questions that are asked have to do with the early government. Okay. The Mayflower Compact, the House of Burgesses, and the Fundamental Orders of Connecticut are the ones that appear. If you see these three things, they are usually grouped together in a multiple choice question. They have something to do with self-government and early democracy. These things come to pass or come to be as the result of England's what we call salutary neglect of the colonies. In other words, England was leaving the colonies alone, and because they were leaving the colonies alone, they grew up on their own and made their own way through life. And as they're coming up, they create their own ways of doing government and doing business. Okay? The big thing to remember with the colonial times is mercantilism. CET-BMC. The idea is that the colonies serve to benefit the mother country. They were created with the express purpose of making money for England, and the system worked in a way where the colonies supplied England with raw materials. England would create those raw materials or make those raw materials into finished goods and send them back to America. When I teach this to my students, I'll tell them to think of going to a restaurant with all of the food that you would like the restaurant to prepare for you. The restaurant prepares the food for you, and then they sell it back to you. And if you see anything mentioned with regard to the Peter Zenger trial, often the Peter Zenger trial is paired in with a Supreme Court case, New York Times versus the United States. It has to do with free speech. It could do with the First Amendment. But if you see the Peter Zenger trial, think free speech. Moving on. Now we get into the American Revolution. All right? The war that made America was the French and Indian War, the FIW. England goes into debt. England is always in debt. England goes into debt and looks to their very profitable colonies to bail them out. The colonies balk at this, and this is where the trouble occurs. The first step on the road to the revolution is the Proclamation of 1763, and this is where the colonists are forbade by England from settling past the Appalachian Mountains because England did not want to have trouble with the Native Americans there. They don't want to spend money to put troops out there, and this is going to lead to tension. Understand that the revolutionary mindset happened gradually. It did not happen overnight. It took a long time for everybody to come around to it, okay? A major influence on the revolution is the Enlightenment era. The Enlightenment was a period of time in Europe where people began to question everything, including where government came from. The big name to know with regard to the revolution is J. Locke, as I like to call him, John Locke. John Locke believed in this idea of natural rights, that people are born with rights to life, liberty, and property, and that government can be removed if it harms the people's rights. This is a big part of the Declaration of Independence and will have a huge influence on Thomas Jefferson, the author of the Declaration of Independence. Another big move towards independence is a book written by a man named Thomas Paine called Common Sense. As Keith Hughes, or Hip Hughes as he's known on the internet, refers to it as the Book of Duh. Okay, it's only common sense that England, which is 3,000 miles away from America, should not have the power to rule America. So England and America should break up. Moving on to the Declaration of Independence. Again, a shout out to our man Hip Hughes. Dear King, you suck. You violated our natural rights. We are breaking up with you. This is the purpose of the Declaration of Independence. Okay? This is why the colonists are breaking away from England. It is explaining what the king did to the colonists. Okay? This is the Declaration of Independence in a nutshell. Moving on again, after the American Revolution, and if you're not sure who won the Revolutionary War, America did. The first government of the United States is the Articles of Confederation. Think of this, if it's British, we don't want it. The government was made very, very weak on purpose. It did not have a president. It did not have a Supreme Court system. The major accomplishment, the only accomplishment of the Articles of Confederation was the Northwest Ordinance, and this was a plan for organizing territory. The tipping point, or the moment when it became clear that we needed a new government, was Shays' Rebellion. This was a rebellion led by a man named Daniel Shays in Massachusetts when he was being threatened with losing his farm. He was a Revolutionary War veteran, and the government almost failed in putting it down, and it convinced the people that America needed a new government, which will lead to the Constitutional Convention, called in 1787. The goal of the convention was initially to revise the AOC, or the Articles of Confederation. They wound up creating a new government. Now, with any sort of arrangement or business deal, there has to be compromise, whether you're buying a new car, negotiating for a house, etc. So there are three that you need to know. The one that always pops up on the regions is the Great Compromise. This was set up by Roger Sherman, and it involved counting representation in the legislative branch. In other words, how much power would each state have in the legislative branch, or the ability to make laws? This involved large population states, or the big states, and small states. This is a two-house or bicameral legislature. Okay, so if you see bicameral legislature, it goes with the Great Compromise. We have the House of Representatives, which is something to satisfy the large states. I'm sorry. It is based on proportional representation. This is why the census, which counts population, is so important. Again, big states want proportional representation. Big states, House of Representatives. BH, big House, small Senate. Small states favor the Senate, is where we have equal representation